Fantastic, Chris. We can see your screen.
All right, awesome.
Go for it. Tell us about Think Big 39.
All right, thanks a lot, Ezekiel. So, evening, everyone. It's really exciting that we are finally on this amazing day to go through this amazing session. So I'll just quickly take us through the program that has organized this session, and that is Think Big 39. And just before I proceed, I will also just request that throughout the presentation, may we have everyone else make sure that you switch off your cameras except for our speakers. You can just manage that, Ezekiel, for us. So just about Think Big 39. So Think Big 39, we are a non-profit organization that that deals with three important pillars, and that is motivation, education, and development. So basically what we do is we take learners as low as your grade 9 in high school. We take them through a journey where we are mentoring them, we are providing them with mentorship, we are tutoring them in order for them to get to grade 12, complete their grade 12, and then we provide them with career development, and through the mentorship programs, we assist them to get to varsity. Once they get to varsity, we still carry them throughout the process to ensure that they are surviving in varsity through our mentorship programs and all that until they become established young professional. So in essence, we are that one organization that seeks to alleviate the inability to get to higher education for learners that are from disadvantaged backgrounds. So as part of our education pillar, as you can see there, we have actually been working on a platform. We call it a digital learning platform called Funa. So what Funa is, it's basically an online learning platform that is developed for the mere fact of assisting learners in ensuring that we tutor them, especially in this period that we are in. But Funa doesn't only focus on that, but rather it focuses on the other different parts, which includes facilitating digital education in the form of your online learning sessions. You can think of your Udemy and the other platforms. So we're basically competing with that. The only difference is that we are focusing our content on Africanism. So what this online learning platform can also be used for is it can be used by universities to basically facilitate that engagement between students and the learning content, and as well as the lectures. If you can think about it, it's basically a virtual campus. It can be used by training consultants whenever you know that you are training people and you are unable to interact with them physically. The platform is a great place to basically onboard your participants or learners or students in this case to engage with them. We also it can also be used by corporate companies and non-profit organizations for training of employees and volunteers. And lastly, it can be used by content developers. So I just want to quickly focus on this content developers part. So this is basically an instance where I know for most of you guys, you are experts, you're either studying or you're already working. So if you know that you're an expert in a specific discipline and you, for instance, let's say you are in accounting, maybe a CA, and then you know that you can share a specific content. Maybe you want to share about strategy as well as profits, profit analysis and all that, and you know that subject so well that you can illustrate it and use demonstrations in a real live and African context, because the whole purpose here is to ensure that we are developing Africa into a position that it can compete with the rest of the world. So, yeah.
Sorry, your screen is not showing properly. If you could just stop sharing and quickly reshare, that should be able to do it.
Let me try doing that again. PowerPoint. Please confirm if you can see that.
I think this will have to do then. It's fine. Let's just go on.
Perfect. Apologies. I hope you didn't lose a lot. Okay, so as I was saying, so you'll have to be able to present that content in a way that it can be used in real life, it can be easily engaged with, and it's also in an African context because we want real life examples. For instance, in accounting, you can come to say accounting for sponsorships, accounting for small businesses, and then you can also prepare that content in a form of slides or any training format. So basically, if you are that type of person, then you are the type of person that we are looking for as a content developer. So what you can do is you just have to contact us. So the end of the session, actually throughout, rather at the end of the day, we'll be providing you guys with an email where you can give us feedback, as well as you can also give us your details if you're interested in being a content developer. So this content development part will basically be for income. So whatever content that we are selling, you will be getting a portion of that. So basically, if you've got any additional questions on that, please feel free to contact us after the session and also make use of that form that we're providing you. So you will also note that at the end of the session, we'll also be providing you guys with a link where you have to provide us with feedback on how you found the session, and if you also have other contents that you would like us to share in the future, that will also be an opportunity for you to share that with us. So towards the end as well, I'll also, Ezekiel, if you can also just assist with that facilitation, if guys have questions around what the organization does in more details, as well as this online learning platform, I would really be glad to be taking questions. So yeah, Ezekiel, back to you. Thanks.
Fantastic stuff there, Presh. Thank you so much. What I really like about this is that we are, or rather as Think Big 39, we are addressing South African problems with South African solutions. And please let me know if you can see my slides. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, we can. Thank you. We can move on.
Fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the privilege of being able to just share some nuggets with you related to sales strategy and also the key skills that one requires to thrive in a business environment. For starters, I'm just going to start off with a quote by Heraclitus: "Change is the only constant in life, and one's ability to adapt to those changes will determine your success in life." So this session is basically just for us to be able to share a couple of ideas on how we can navigate some of these changes that were basically subjected to, similar to looking at COVID, and strategy becomes one of the key pillars that one needs to look at when they are dealing with change. And just a disclaimer, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and would be more than happy to address them at the end of this session. So what's on the menu? Just to whet your appetite, we're going to be talking strategy. We're going to be looking at sales and how that fits into strategy. And we'll also be looking at the panel discussion, which is like the carrot cake on my screen here, where I'll be chatting to my co-stars about how they've been able to manage their careers, where they started from and how they pivoted to where they are today. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be certainly exciting. And now just to start with the first part, the main course, looking at what is strategy, how does it apply to us at work, and perhaps even on an individual level. For starters, I'm going to borrow from the words of a strategy guru in the name of Michael Porter. He says strategy is about making choices. It's about trade-offs. It's about deliberately choosing to be different. As organizations we work for, strategy is about them being different to their competitors, and equally in an individual capacity, we are brands and we are servicing various companies. So therefore, how do we differentiate ourselves in the competitive work environment? That's how strategy can also talk to us at an individual level. For starters, just to unpack strategy a little bit, what we're looking at, the first pillar here is strategy speaks to the direction that the company is taking, the direction that the organization is taking. Equally, when I'm managing my career, I should also be able to sit down with myself and say, what is my strategy going forward? How do I want to manage my career? In which direction should I take my career? Now, when we move on to other aspects of strategy in terms of a business strategy, the key things about strategy are the mission. What is the company in existence for? What is its purpose? When we look at the vision, is looking at what is the future state of the company or organization? Where do we want to take this organization? Perhaps we're looking at my favorite cell phone brand being Samsung. We're looking at perhaps they want to be the best electronics provider in the world. And Apple they may want to be the most innovative company in the world. So when we're looking at vision, it's very critical to know where we want to go. And the core values is what I would like to call cultural enablers, because when we look at the core values of a company, those enable the culture and the strategy. So when we hear Peter Drucker saying culture eats strategy for breakfast, it's because unless your culture is aligned with your strategy, your business strategy is not going to be implemented effectively. Now, in terms of on an individual level, how do these things speak to me, Ezekiel? Why are you talking to me about these? It's because as I map out my career, if I'm able to understand the direction that a company is taking, I should be able to say to myself, is this the direction that I want to take as well? Is this an opportunity that I want to take? And I'm also being mindful that in our context in South Africa, perhaps we're not always spoiled for choice in terms of which jobs we take. But if I'm looking to take a specific job, I'm able to decide for myself and say, perhaps this is a job that I'm only going to do for 2 years and use it as a stepping stone, as part of the direction that I want to take my career in. Or perhaps this is a company that I would like to stay in for the long haul. Now, by being able to evaluate that company strategy, I'm able to plot my career based on how I'm going to work and align with that specific company that I want to work for. And that's the same for entrepreneurs who are on the call. This is very important. How do I structure my business and where is my business going? And then looking at the last pillar of strategy that I would like to talk to for this presentation is the 3 tiers of strategy. Strategy takes place at a corporate level. That's where you have perhaps where you call them holding companies. And the business strategy, the business entities under that corporate business, it's important to know that these have to be aligned to the corporate strategy. And then functional, operational, or departmental strategy is the 3rd tier. So when I'm mapping out my career and I want to know how I can grow in a specific company, if I understand how the operational strategy speaks to business strategy and corporate strategy, I'm able to map out my career for the long haul to say, if my desire is to climb up the corporate ladder, there is a corporate ladder to climb. But if the business is a very small business, obviously there isn't a lot of room to grow upwards. Perhaps there may be laterally. Now that is the importance of strategy and trying to bring it down to a context of how do I map out my career in an organization, or broadly speaking, what direction should my career take? And these are some of the insights that we will also later on indulge in when we chat to our panel members, where they share some of those insights on what did I study, and how did I map out my career? So those are some interesting insights that we're going to explore together. I know that's strategy 101. That's basically a crash course, but keep those questions coming in the chat box and I will address them at the end of the presentation. Moving on to the next slide, Ezekiel, you promised to talk about sales. So hold on to your horses. I'm already here. Once we are able to establish what a business is doing and where it's going, then we start setting targets. To say we give sales targets, the revenue is very critical for us to be able to grow the business. But the approach that we use to sell is very important. And I'll just borrow off Mark Cuban's quote where he says, selling is never about convincing, it's always about helping. That means I need to find a need to speak to, solve the need, and then I'm able to make a sale. And speaking to the approach again, an interesting statistic about sales and how we approach the market is by the B2B lead. They said half of all sales time is spent on ineffective prospecting. In layman's terms, prospecting is just looking for the right customer. That is what I would call prospecting. But we are going to explore how, as a seller or as a salesperson, either in a corporate business or in an entrepreneurial startup, how do I make the most of my sales journey? What are the key things that I need to be aware of when I go out and sell? The first tool is, or the first question you would need to ask yourself is, who is my ideal customer? You have to have a classical ideal customer profile, or some call it a customer avatar or customer persona, but I need to have an idea of who am I going to sell to. If I'm looking to bring in, as Elon Musk, Tesla electric vehicles into South Africa, I need to understand the kind of customer who's going to buy it. Perhaps psychographically, and the way this person thinks is that they think about the environment before anything else. This person lives in perhaps a Sandton or Sandhurst area. Perhaps this person has a lot of money, and in their investments, they often focus on things such as ESG. So in essence, what I've put on these slides, and we will share the slide deck at the end of the presentation, but the key thing is, and bring it all nicely home, is to be mindful of your customer profile, which consists of these 4 pillars: demographic, psychographic, transactional, and behavioral. So that's the first thing you need to ask yourself before you say, I'm going to market. Who am I going to sell to? Don't be trying to sell a Maserati to Ezekiel, who likes it but cannot afford it. So this helps you to be able to prospect effectively. Now, another key question that we need to consider when we're selling is, what am I selling? And a tool or framework that's really helpful is called the value proposition canvas. What does it do? It takes the jobs that need to be done and it matches them with the product or services that are going to speak to that specific job. For example, let's say Ezekiel is tired of printing paper after paper in the work environment, and I want to go digital. I want to digitize my workflow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop working off notebooks, and perhaps Samsung can sell me a tab with an S Pen, or I could buy an iPad. And that is the product or service that speaks to the jobs. But it must equally speak to the pains, the frustration of, if Ezekiel is a business person and needs to travel all the time, I don't want to be carrying loose papers around or carrying flip files all the time where I'm traveling. I want to travel light. So that would speak to the pain relievers, speaking to these pains that the customer is experiencing. And the benefits, the overall benefits would be the gain creators that I need to take from the product to speak to the user. What are the gains? Well, Ezekiel, this is not only going to be for work purposes. This tablet can help you put your music on it. You can put anything else that you would want. Perhaps you're a gamer, you can put your games on it. You can put your music on it. You can watch your movies on it while you travel as well. So that is another benefit that is associated with that product. In a nutshell, what I'm saying here is that a tool that is very helpful in understanding what you are selling to the market is the value proposition canvas. It breaks it down neatly for you to make sense of what exactly your value proposition is. And once we understand those and we start going to the market, one other critical factor is to understand the sales cycle. Breaking down the sales cycle very quickly, you start off with prospecting. This is where I'm looking for business. And then I initiate contact. How am I going to approach this potential client? Am I going to call them or I set up a meeting? How I do it is very important. And then I've got to understand their needs. What problems is this specific client faced with in order for me to speak to how my product is able to solve their problems? Once I've been able to overcome this and I understand their needs, then only can I start speaking to how my product is going to solve for their needs and manage their objections. Perhaps the client is saying, hey, man, I like your product, but it's not a fit. Or I like your product, but it's not functional in my business department. Or perhaps they may say, we just have financial constraints. So you start managing those objections. There are a number of objections they may have. You need to know how to manage them in order to move the sales cycle to a close. Once you've managed your objections, you close the sale, you have the sale. Now, Ezekiel, why are you telling us about the sales cycle and why should I care about the sales cycle? If you don't know your sales cycle properly, you will continue experiencing inefficiencies in your sales process without understanding and pinpointing where those inefficiencies lie. And another thing is time is money. You don't want to waste it. The sooner I'm able to close my sale, the sooner I'm able to bring in money for the company. So speed is key. I don't want my sales cycle taking too long. The sooner I close it, the better. And that's where the ka-ching comes in. Now, another aspect that I would like you to consider at the first stage of starting your sales process is qualifying whether this opportunity is going to close or not. You don't want to be wasting your time trying to sell a Maserati to Ezekiel for 5 months, and at the end of 5 months, you only realize, this guy cannot afford it. He told me he likes this car. It looks good on him. He put it on Instagram when he was test driving it, but Ezekiel cannot afford this car. So you want to be able to test whether when I'm talking to a prospective client or potential client, will they buy or not? We use something called the band technique. It's one of many other techniques. It's not the only one, and you can always take it and customize it for your needs. But what band stands for is when I'm engaging with a client, I want to be able to check if they have the budget. Secondly, the A would be authority. Am I talking to the right person? In terms of a buyer's journey nowadays, it's not left to one person to decide on whether they'll make a purchase or not. That buying decision would be spread across different people. It may be the CFO, the CEO, and you might need the user as well. So you need to understand who is decisive in making that buying decision, and you want to be talking to that person. And then the N would be for need. If there is no need, you are unlikely to close a sale. So there has to be a need. You need to understand what the pain points the client is faced with are, and then you would be able to sell. And the last thing that I would want us to bear in mind is the timing. Timing is absolutely critical in sales. So for example, I would have a product that I want to sell, and the people are loving it. They need it. But then they tell me, Ezekiel, the only challenge is we'll only be able to buy in the next financial year. That is something I've got to be able to time properly when I'm engaging with all the clients. So by rule of thumb, if you've got 3 of these, you've got a potential opportunity that you can work on. If you've got less than 3 of these, you are probably just wasting your time. You'd much rather spend that time on other resources or other clients and prospecting elsewhere. So this is what the band technique it does. It just helps you with prospecting. It makes it so much more efficient and saves your salespeople time. Even as an entrepreneur, don't try and force the sale. If there's no need, you're talking to the wrong client or the wrong prospect. So you would have to keep it moving. And then now speaking to the need, how do we treat the need? This is the Refinitiv way of selling, how we sell at Refinitiv and London Stock Exchange Group. So there are three modes of selling to consider when you're looking at a need. It's either you're shaping the need. What I mean by shaping the need is like going to a doctor. You collaborate with the doctor to pinpoint what the problem is and how to heal that specific problem, or you come up with a prescription. The doctor will give a prescription. So in shaping the need, that would be a space where I come in and I collaborate with the client and say, this is the actual problem and this is how we're going to solve it. Or when you create the need, this is where you would ideally want to be. Similar to how an insurance person would call me, hey, Ezekiel, how you doing, man? And then they start selling me insurance that I don't need. I don't need insurance at this point in time, but somebody sold it to me and made me realize that I might need it. It's not actually a tangible need that I have, but somebody told me that I need it. So they created the need. These two areas is where we want to play. Shape the need or create the need. That's how you sell efficiently and beat the competition. When you're responding to a need, this is already too late, and I'm just going to show it on my next slide. When I'm responding to a need, I'm already late in the buyer's process, and this is where perhaps the buyer already knows what their problem is, and now they've gone out to market. They told the procurement guys, go out to market, we want to purchase 1, 2, 3, or we need a couple of people to bid for this tender. So this is already late because the competition becomes stiffer when you're responding to a need. So ideally, when we're dealing with a need, we want to play in shaping or creating the need. That's the type of mindset that we would want to play in as salespeople. And that wraps it up. Just to kind of bring it home together again, selling is never about convincing, but it is always about helping. And that brings a close to the first segment of my presentation. I don't know if we have any questions on the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just to take some quick questions. Do we have any questions on the chat? Ezekiel?
Hi, Ezekiel, can we ask questions directly?
Sure. Let's take them. Sorry, I don't see who I'm talking to.
Are you speaking to Tebo BT?
Tebo, fantastic, man. Please go for it.
Yeah.
What's your question?
Yeah, great. Just regarding the selling, on the selling journey, you're talking about the importance of creating the need.
Yeah.
So what is the risk of creating a need whereby when you create that need, you might open it up for your competitors to take it up if they are competitive on price on the product that you're selling, because you're creating the need maybe prior to you launching the product. And then once the customers are aware of that, how do you protect your market to ensure that your competitors don't steal from what you've created?
Fantastic, man. That's a brilliant question, and thank you so much for asking the question. So in terms of your question, there are two things here. As part of your strategy, whatever products you decide you're taking to market, you're going to have to decide whether you're going to sell on price or you're going to sell on value. So the advantage of creating and shaping a need is that you've moved ahead of your competitors. Sales become heart to heart, human to human, before they become business to business. So what you've already gained there is the trust of the client. They trust that you understand their problem and you've been working on the problem with them from the start. The chances of them moving to somebody they don't know are very slim. So if when it comes to the discussions around pricing and so forth, and they start talking to you about price, you go back to understanding the need again. If everything you're doing solves for their need, they're going to likely pay for that, because if I've got a headache and the doctor tells me that if the doctor tells me you need a Panado or you need Disprin specifically, because of the diagnosis and the prescription, I'm going to go directly for the Disprin, no matter how much more expensive a Disprin is for a Panado, because we were together in dealing with what the problem is and in solving the problem. So there is trust in saying, I trust what my doctor is saying. In this case, you would be the doctor who's being trusted to give the right prescription because you gave the diagnosis. I don't know if that answers your question, but just to add on to that, compete on value, emphasize value, value, value over price. Don't try and compete with a price, with somebody who's pitching on price in that regard. Compete on value, sell the value. This is your headache, sir, and this is how we cure your headache. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, great. It does. Thank you very much, Ezekiel.
Thanks. That's a great question. Thanks a lot. I see Lucky Dliwayo has his hand up. Lucky, please unmute yourself and shoot.
All right. Myself, I'm not just asking a question. I was just asking if is it possible that we get the slides after the session?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna send it to Think Big 39, and then they will distribute them.
All right. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I don't know if we have any other questions other than that, just to make sure that we continue benefiting from our conversations here. I don't see any other questions going once, going twice. Sold to the highest bidder, which is nobody.
Just one last question. You were talking about you don't have to waste time on the customers that would not buy. What about the aspect of business development where it might be critical to build a market on certain areas so that later on they can be able to benefit from your product, even though they cannot afford it at that particular stage?
Okay, that's a really good question. Thanks for that. So in terms of how you manage those customers, you nurture them. That would mean you touch base with them from time to time. In case, for example, let's say their financials start changing and they start doing better, then you nurture those clients so that when they are ready to buy, you are able to sell to them, but they're not going to be at the top of your priority list in that regard. I don't know if that answers your question. If you're talking about business development, are you talking about getting into a new market altogether, or is it still fighting for the same share in a red ocean type of environment?
Yeah, I think it's more around the interaction with those customers who probably will have to interact with them at a low frequency versus those that you are more likely to get business, where you classify them in segments.
Yeah. No, thanks. Thanks for the question. I believe that's Thabo. A legend. Thabo.
Yeah.
The better half. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
I'm just joking. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your engagement in that regard. We're going to move to the next part of our schedule, where we're going to be looking at our panel discussion. We've got some wonderful people joining us on the panel, and I'm just going to reintroduce them again. We've got, sorry, I see a question there. Bongani, let me see if I can come back to that question at the end if we have some time. Please hold on to that question, but I'll come back to it. We've got Thabo PT from S&P Global Platts, and he's the Senior Commercial Manager who looks after business development and growth in Africa. We've got Justin van Wyk. Justin, if you could please just switch on your camera. Justin van Wyk is, he's the digital wealth specialist for London Stock Exchange Group, looking at Africa and the Nordic countries. And then we've got the lovely Tebiso Lebalo, who's a brand manager. She's a brand manager at Sandoz. But a beauty with brains, eh? We've brought it here. We are transforming the landscape. We've got ladies on board as well. Shout out to Think Big 39. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with ladies first as I'm interviewing them. Tebiso, I've known you for some time, man. I've known you since the times at Wits where we were getting mugged together on the streets. And yeah, you studied biochemistry and molecular biology, but you ended up in sales. Like, was that part of the plan? Or how did your journey actually kind of progress from when I left you at Wits and we parted ways? None of us were speaking about sales, so it must have been something we stumbled across. How did you navigate your career starting with a BSc in medical biochemistry actually, and end up in sales? And the reason why I'm asking this is because many of us, we often study things that we don't end up in, and this might be helpful to somebody who's at the early stages of their career thinking, hey, I'm stuck, and they're not necessarily stuck.
Absolutely. So thank you, Ezekiel, and good evening, everyone. As I have been introduced, I am the lovely Tebiso Interview. And yeah, my background, how I started, yeah, we did first year with Ezekiel. So I started BSc and I majored in biochemistry and microbiology. And the plan there initially was to do my science degree and then from then on move on to medicine. So along the lines, I saw friends that were doing medicine. I did some job shadowing and decided that, you know, maybe this is not for me. And then as I went on to my studies, I fell in love with pathology. So what I did is I worked in my third year, I worked at the Rodipod forensics department, and I did some pathology work. And yeah, I did it for 3 months. And then from then on, I decided, nah, this is not for me. So for those that know me, thank you to the audience that have joined on my behalf, is that I'm a very bubbly person. I am an extrovert. So I wanted to go into a career where I will, you know, I will be interactive with people. And so what I did is that I tried to search that with the BSc degree, what other fields can I go into, you know, besides working into the lab? Because I needed a field that would allow me to interact and engage with people. So what I did is I searched, I looked around, and I stumbled into Tipis, who's also one of our panelists today. And yeah, just started finding out. So he was into sales, but by that time he was working for Sanofi. Just started finding out, is the sales business, what does it entail? And very importantly, he became my mentor. And yeah, so that's exactly how I stumbled into sales. So I started as a pharmacy sales rep. Then I became a doctor detailer. And then so I moved from science, I moved into sales, and now eventually, as Ezekiel has introduced me, I am a marketing manager. So I now moved into marketing. So that is basically the story about how I transitioned from science to sales and then into marketing. So it is very, it is very important for people to know that it's not always that whatever you study is what you will land, where you will land up working. So it's very important for you to be open to different fields and try out different things. So like I said, I talk a lot, so I'm just going to stop there and give other people a chance. Thank you, Ezekiel.
Sure, Tippy, thank you so much. That was quite a mouthful, and it's exciting to see a lady doing well in a sales environment, which, contrary to popular belief, people might think it's not an environment for ladies. But here's one lady who is thriving in that specific environment. Thanks a lot, Tippy. I'm gonna bring you back just now, but you picked on Tabo Pizzi, so while the iron is still hot, let me just strike. Tabo, your journey was very similar to that of Tebiso's, although you kind of, I would say you kind of paved the way in some respect, where you studied a bachelor's of science in biochemistry as well. But you're one of the top names that come to mind when I think of salespeople on the African continent. What was your journey like when you left university? I mean, and went into the workplace. How did you navigate your career to such a point that you ended up in sales?
Thank you very much, Ezekiel. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say big thanks to Think Big 039 and Ezekiel for inviting me to this session today, and all of my friends that have joined on this session today. So it's a very interesting introduction, and thanks, Tepi. So my career, in fact, it's went more or less similar to Tebiso in a way that I also studied biochemistry and medical sciences at Wits University. So the intention initially was to become a drug designer in a way of, pharmacology. So I wanted to study BSc and then go into honors in pharmacology and get to design the interesting drugs, or even, the vaccines for the likes of COVID-19 and so on and so forth. So the sales bug actually caught me when I was doing my final year of biochemistry, where we had the pharmaceutical companies coming into the university to come and recruit students. And there I saw the opportunity to get into pharmaceutical industry, which would obviously propel me to the career aspiration that I've always wanted to go into. But I think in your earlier presentation, maybe one context to bring to the audience is that, why are we talking about sales? What is so unique about sales in the whole big scheme of things around business? I mean, if you think about, business, it has a whole lot of other departments that are equally as important. But, sales is very critical in terms of, it's basically, it balances the cash flow, which is the bloodline for every business. So when I got into sales, I was like any other, young person that thought, oh, sales is not a sexy job. But I got into it and I learned a lot, working in the pharmaceutical industry. But I would like to think of myself as a very curious person. So I've always wanted to learn different things. So I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a period of about 6 years, and I worked for different companies. And within that, I then later ventured into something different, which is information intelligence, that led me to meet up with you from a commodity side of business. But I will tell you a little bit more about how I got into commodities. But I think sales is very important for any young people, whether you are in high school or in university. I think the first degree that you study in university, the most important thing is that it just enables you to help you with problem-solving skills. So it doesn't limit you to the kind of career that you can go into. There are a lot of opportunities out there that you can try, and sales is also very good in terms of opening up your horizons and helping you eventually if you want to go into business yourself. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Thabo. Be mindful of time. I'm gonna move on to Justin, but I'm gonna bring you guys back. We've got a lot of questions to unpack. But Justin, both you and I have come a long way in 2 years in such a short space of time. You studied finance. I'd imagine you'd be a financial analyst or you'd be in financial management, but you became a portfolio manager, you worked for SBG Securities, you became an ETF specialist. How did you navigate your career from the beginning? I mean, your journey was quite interesting. At some point you were a teacher, and geez, bruh, so you're a hustler of note. How did you navigate from when you left university? I think you became a teacher and then you got into portfolio management. Eventually you came into sales. What was your career progression like, and did you intentionally manage it like that, or was it like just grabbing any opportunity with both hands?
Thanks, Zeke, and thanks to everybody for joining. And that's a great question. I think if anything, my career has not really been a planned career. But I think it takes it back to, I think, the fundamental of who I am. And I think everybody needs to understand that they have their own fundamental truth of who they are. And I think this goes back to high school, where I did a lot of SRC work, a lot of government work, and I come from a family who's in the church. So we did a lot of church work. But I saw the NGO side of things, and I always knew that I was more entrepreneurial minded, but I also wanted to kind of also help the economy and help South Africa and the continent. So I said, well, but Dad's a minister. I actually like money, right? So let me go pursue money first, and also try to understand the financial markets that govern how money is made. So that was my thinking. And then let me take this back to one day, once I have the skills, take it back to our communities. My community, I'm from Cape Town, where it's impoverished. And let's see if we can help it. Let's take those skills. And that's why I studied business. And I actually started off doing law. And then I realized for myself, law was dry. I thought the nice thing at the time was finance, investments, the economy, and I decided to study that. And when I left university, I didn't have the privilege of having to get into the best grad programs. In fact, I think the week before Christmas, I had another job on the day I graduated, or after I graduated, and I started networking. Right, I started networking, speaking to people within my network to see if there are any grad programs, any positions, and I stumbled across somebody who took a chance on me. And I think that's the first thing everybody needs to know, is that open your mouth, network, ask. Don't be scared to ask. You'll be surprised how the universe, God, whatever you believe in, answers. And once I was in Santam, I got placed in the actuarial department and understood from that point, a little bit about how money sort of flowed in the company and out of the company. But I actually wanted to understand how they made that money, how they got the clients to buy. But I also want to understand the economy. So then I applied for a job at SBG Securities, and I got it, right, as a junior trader. And what that taught me was something interesting. On a desk, 23 years old, they give you a phone after you studied 3 weeks of a course, and they say, you speak to a client about equities. And that's the first thing I realized was I had to convince a client to trust a 23, 24, 25-year-old, right? And 6 months of failure, clients getting upset, but you just pick yourself up and keep going. And from that, I moved on through to Old Mutual, where I worked and I structured ETFs and ETNs. And there I started understanding a different part of the business, another different side of the sales cycle, right? Product development, understanding the market, and also understanding the failure in building those products. And again, I kept that entrepreneurial goal in the background, right? And everything I've done has been about getting to that goal of becoming an entrepreneur. And I launched a product that failed, in the infancy, and this is sort of from a lovely book that I read, where it says you start at point A, you think you can get to point B, and point B will be very, it can be positive, but you might actually end up in point Z, completely unexpected, but actually the sweet spot, right? And that's where we ended up at Old Mutual. After going through various products, I managed to launch Note. It's now close to R1 billion, two and a bit years later, the largest in South Africa. In the retail space, so one of the largest in the retail space. And then I took a sabbatical because I was like, okay, fine, what now, right? I've done the client, the hustling, going out to entertain financial advisors, get clients, bring them on board, manage their money, build the confidence, understand the product development. I thought, okay, let me take a sabbatical. I went to London, spent 6 months, in London meeting various people. And I realized the one thing that's missing was the sales side, right? To tie it all together. And that's when I tapped into my network from investments. And again, create your networks. They will support you. And I mean, there's a famous saying you're the average of your network, right? And that to a large extent is true. So build that network. And I managed to not only get the job at Refinitiv, but also the job to spearhead a new department targeting the wealth department in Africa and the Nordics. And that's how I ended up here. And again, that's not the final step. Zeke, you and I both know I'm busy focusing on specifically on agriculture and expanding that. And that is where I tie in the private sector, the do good, and I call it transformational entrepreneurship, and the passion of wanting to actually pursue, the positive impact on the economy and the continent.
As I would usually say in the language of comrades, you are fighting, Chief. You are fighting. While I still have you, Justin, I mean, touching on that point in terms of entrepreneurship, look, you're at a I'd say at a crossroad. So what are the critical skills and I would say soft skills, that one needs to thrive in a business environment? And that can either apply to corporate as well as entrepreneurship, because obviously sales is very critical, moving it into entrepreneurship. But what are the critical soft skills that one would require to thrive in a business environment?
Perfect. And I think Look, this is just some of the things that I think are important. There are many different soft skills, and I think 85% of all skills you need to acquire actually soft skills, like in terms of communication. It's very important. So I think the very important thing is, I think, learning from clients in sales when to talk and when to listen, right? People place emphasis on listening a lot. That's important, but you also need to know when to talk, right? And when to bring out the questions from the client, when to bring in your confidence, when to bring in your expertise, when to let the client speak. That is a very, very fine line, right? And then often what you find is you have an amazing product, you've got amazing company, you've got amazing everything, but you just talk the entire 45 minutes to an hour, and the client actually hasn't said anything. And often you find clients will interject and break you in your train of thought because they've picked up something important. And I think that's the one thing, right? Clients will direct you in a conversation. Regardless of client product, the client will direct you if you listen and respond to that. And then I think that also ties into the next one. I think in terms of networking, again, network is about that. And when you're sitting in front of the client, you're constantly networking. You're always selling, right? Networking. You're not there to just network. You're there to network with a purpose and a goal to land the sale, right? Build your network as fast, as wide as possible. And if you want to know how to network, just go to, if you like the pub, if you love the sports bar, if you love anywhere, the cricket field, the church, go speak to a stranger. Start learning how to network from there and build that out and continue to grow it. And I think another thing that I really picked up is curiosity. The most successful people in the organization are those the most curious and who are willing to go and sort of capture and grab that curiosity and turn it into something that is productive, right? And to unpack it. It can be, and when I say productive, I don't mean just product. I mean even in yourself, right? A growth mindset, right? That curiosity can spark the growth mindset to push yourself, to learn more about yourself, to learn more about the organization, to learn more about your clients, the market, everything. It starts with curiosity. And I think I'll leave it there, Zeke.
Wow, fantastic, bro.
Oh, the last one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tenacity. Tenacity and grit, right? Many doors will be shut in your face, right? We're in sales, you're starting a new business, right? Many doors will be closed, right? But believe in yourself, believe in your product, the process, be tenacious, right? Don't be aggressive, be tenacious. Go out and go, land those deals, don't take no for an answer, and find where it works and guide your process according to that.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Justin. I'm going to bring you back a bit later, but I want to move on to Tebiso because she's a lady in the business environment. Tebiso, if I could just have you back. And just for the benefit of the audience, I'm sorry, we will make sure that we end promptly by 19:30 at the latest, to give you enough time as well just to ask our panel questions. But now getting to Tebiso, we hear so much about the challenges that women are faced with, perhaps lack of transformation in the work environment. But we see you thriving, for example, at Tebiso, But in your estimation, what are the sort of, it's a similar question to what I asked Justin, but I think I'd like to hear it from a female perspective. What are the sort of skills that one needs to thrive? And I also know you're a bit of a hustler on the side with side hustles. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, as well as looking at business itself, what are the key skills that you would say one needs in order to thrive?
Okay, all right. So some of the soft skills that I'm about to talk about, Justin touched on. So I'll be just brief, in the space of time. But the most important one for me has been active listening and probing. So you need to be a good listener, so be a good listener, and you need to understand the customer's needs or the needs of any other stakeholder. So you remember that in sales, you're not just working with the customer, you're also working with the internal people, your managers and so forth. So very important is not just to listen, but listen to understand, because not all listening is hearing. So this is where probing comes in as well. where I say that probing is very important, because that's where you need to dig deep into understanding what is the customer's needs, or what is the need at hand. So for me, that is not just in sales, but just in life. You need to have active listening and probing skills. So that's the first one. The second skill that one would need to have, and this is not just in sales, this is just in everybody, any working experience in general, and entrepreneurship as well, is that you need to be able to solve problems in a diplomatic manner. So the business environment is very dynamic, and every day is never the same. So you'll have good days, you'll have bad days, you'll have challenging days, and so forth. So a good problem solver will always anticipate problems ahead of time, and develop an alternative solutions for problems in the future. So for me, that is quite key. And then last but not least is that you need to be a team worker, and you need to be a leader. Even though currently you are an employee and you're not a leader, you need to have a leader mindset, because that's how one becomes spotted into getting into a managerial position. I'll stop there. I could go on, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Sure. When are you releasing your book?
Very soon. Very soon.
Thanks a lot, Tipi. Let me just pick Tabo's brain on the same question. Tabo, if we could just get you back on the spotlight there, and hey, you're a man with years of experience. I'll call you the LeBron James of sales. But from your corporate experience, I mean, it's not only you haven't only been in sales, but well, not in the same industry per se, but you've been across different industries. What's critical for you in terms of soft skills that our young people who are up and coming, even young people like myself who are up and coming, that need to learn or have in order to thrive in a business environment?
Yeah, thanks, Ezekiel, and thanks to the colleagues and some of the soft skills that they've mentioned. I think what is critical also for the young people that are on the call today is to understand the importance of soft skills over and above the hard skills that you would have gained at university and the likes. But I think the most important one, in particular in the context of South Africa, is work ethic. I think work ethic is very, very important, that you need to respect your job and be able to, in order for you to be effective, be punctual, be responsible and take accountability in terms of, if you are given a task, you need to be able to execute the task accordingly. And I think the other one that I really think is very important in the context of, my sales career is the empathy. I think empathy is very important in a sense that, often we tend to focus on what we do in a job space, and you channel yourself to what it is that you do, and you don't think about anything beyond that. So it's very important that sometimes you think outside and, get yourself to, maybe go to networks and meet with people outside. And a typical example with myself is I'm very passionate about, mentoring young people. Tebiso is one of the example of the young person that I've mentored into the corporate space. So I think you always have to give yourself, stretch yourself, and be able, because there's so much that you can learn from other industries that you can bring into your industry. I always say to people that are coached, that go into job opportunities as well, that diversity is very important, and diversity is not just in the case of race or anything like that, but it also, if you are in the ITC environment, if they're only hiring people from sales, telecom, and other people for a sales role in the ICT environment, it doesn't create diversity unless they bring someone from a commodity sector or someone from the banking sector who has the sales experience, that will try and bring in the mix within the company. So I think it's very important to broaden your thinking. So those are some of the soft skills that I think are very important for young people that are thinking into getting into a sales role or any kind of entrepreneurial opportunity in the in the corporate world, or you want to start your own business.
Sure. And thanks, Thabo. Thanks for that, man. And I can attest to that. I know I'm still a rough diamond that you're trying to polish.
Yeah.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I see some questions. Please keep them coming. We'll take the questions shortly. We're just going to take some questions that I'm going to ask the panel, and then we'll get to the question and answer session. But Thabo, while I still have you on the line, what are the 3 main lessons that you would share with a young Thabo BT, perhaps a 20-year-old version of yourself, just about to complete varsity, get into the work environment? What are the 3 key lessons that you would leave to a younger version of yourself?
Yeah, I think, the most important thing is that you need to be fair to yourself, and think that when I think about the young version of Thabo, 20-year-old, I was still in varsity, and I think the most important thing is to tell yourself that you are enough. One of the challenges that faces a lot of young people right now is the challenge of instant gratification. We want it now. We want it now. We want to get rich quickly. So you need to be, just take the opportunity, sit back, and understand that you still have a lot of, a lot of things to learn in the university environment. And when you get into a working environment, yes, you leave university, whether you graduate with cum laude, you think to yourself, you know everything, but you need to open up that, opportunity to allow yourself to still learn a little bit more. And I think that the other thing that I would really tell the young me would be the importance of being financially savvy, the value of money, being able to save early. And the other thing that really inspires me about you and some of the young people that I engage with is young people need to really take the opportunity and take the risk. And, if you want to get into business, you don't have to wait until you are 35 or 40. You need to take the chances while you're still young and go out there. And so I think the young, the 20-year-old Thabo would be proud of who I have become right now. But I think I would really say to him that, look, you don't have to put a lot of pressure on yourself. You are enough, and you still have a lot to learn.
Ah, fantastic. So play the long game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but me, I want to be like you now.
You need to pay your dues.
Thank you for sharing that, Thabo. In the world of social media that we live in, it's so important to remind ourselves not to compare ourselves with the next person, but stay in your lane and keep, like you said, earning your stripes. Thanks a lot. I'm going to bring you back for further questions. Tebi, can I bring you back to the floor before we wrap up with Justin on the same question?
Okay.
The young female Tebi who's 20 years old, just about to get out of varsity, what would you say to them today? What are the key lessons that you would share with them?
Yeah, so that's a very powerful question. And if I look at the 20-year-old Tebi, the first thing I would tell her is that you need to fly the black girl flag high. And I always preach it every single day. It is challenging. Being a woman in the business world is not easy, So you need to be resilient, keep pushing until you get to the point where you want to. And very important is to learn as much as you can in all the fields, explore, and don't be afraid to try new ideas. Don't sit in a block. Always try new things because you don't know where you might land. Look at me. I started in science, and I'm now in marketing. I didn't even study marketing, but this is where I am. The second thing I would tell a 20-year-old Tebiso is that while you are still young, so it's alluding as well to Thabo's point, and I do many talks to young upcoming professionals, and this is what I always preach, and I always preach it to the young Tebiso, is that while you're still young, start setting money aside each month for savings and investment. So quit at a young age to reap the rewards when you get older. And then last but not least is that choose a career or a major that you will love and do great things in the world. Most importantly, reach for the stars. And something else which is very key is network. Network, because no man is an island. The only way that you can get higher into the corporate ladder, or if you're not planning to go corporate, you want to go into business, is through networking. For us, networking was Wits Business School. Networking could be, golf sessions and so forth. Any platform of networking that you can go into, do it, because it will help you in the future. That's me.
Oh, that's amazing, Tepi. Thanks a lot. You are an inspiration and a shining bright light to young Black ladies coming up in corporate. And Justin, bro, you've come a long way, man. You've come a long way. I've learned quite a lot from you as well. To your 20-year-old self, what would you say to them? Guys, just before Justin answers, please keep those questions coming. I love them. I see them, and we will attend to them as soon as Justin is done. Justin, man, what would you say to your 20-year-old version of Justin,
Perfect. I think 20-year-old, even through to now 33-year-old, sometimes you got to keep reminding yourself that the 20-year-old is still inside, eh?
Wow.
So there's a quote from a woman leader I really sort of respect, in Sheryl Sandberg, one of them, the many, and she said something like, life is actually not, or life for your career is not really a corporate ladder. It's more like a jungle gym, right?
Yeah.
You can go up when you need to. You can come back down when you need to. Go sideways, left, right. But as long as you're moving to the positions that make sense to you and your career path, that is fine, right? And I think that speaks to a lot of what has been spoken to earlier in terms of benchmarking yourself against others, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's on their own jungle gym or their own corporate ladder if they want a corporate ladder, but define your journey the way you want to define it. And then I think that also talks to the next point in terms of, having patience, because that jungle gym, buddy, when you're at the bottom and you're on your haunches and you're trying to climb, it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
So patience, trust the process, trust in yourself and back yourself 100%. The journey doesn't end. It keeps going. So, get ready for it, batten down the hatches and just, be patient with the process, be kinder to yourself in achieving those goals. And then also don't fear failure. I think, right, everybody or most people in South Africa come from, a previously disadvantaged background, right, because of the history of our past. And that, creates an environment, a lot it did with me, where I feared failing, because it meant a lot of things, right? Failing at university meant, the money. Failing at work potentially meant no job, right? These are fears. But don't let the fears and the failures drive you, right? I think there's, again, another quote that I quite like from another leader. It said, if you aren't experiencing failure, then you're making a far worse mistake. You're being driven by the desire to avoid it, right? We know failure is where we learn the most. And it might not seem like that when you're 16 or 17. But, think of it when I was 16. I went up to a girl, right, that I liked, approached her, said, hey, I like you. She told me to go away. Right? Didn't stop me from going to the next one, right? I streamlined the process, right? I learned from that mistake, and I kept going. And I think last one, know what you're good at. I think society today, once you've got to be in high school or university and be the good at everything, right? It's impossible. Yeah. Focus on what you're good at, right? If you're a sprinter, focus on sprinting. You're not going to go run long distance. So focus what you're good at, become the expert at that. And the success, how you define that success will come.
Yeah. Fantastic, bro. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. I'm seeing quite a lot of questions coming from the floor. And I'm going to start off with this question. It's coming from Bongani, saying, how do I grow market share? And I've got ideas on that, but let me benefit from our panel members here. Tawapiti, how do I grow market share in my business? I think that's a fairly generic question, but What do you think of that?
Oh, thank you. That's a very interesting question. I think the most important thing in business is you need to understand, as you've explained earlier on, understanding the business that you're in and the market that you participate in. There's a lot of ways in how you can grow your market share. In terms of, I think one of the questions earlier was around, business development. So you can implement a lot of strategies like, where you target, the low-hanging fruit, and also equally running your business development strategy to make sure that you create awareness about your product or the services that you're providing to the market, and to be able to to grow your market share. And also you can also tap into, I mean, depending on what industry you're in, thought leadership is very important in terms of creating awareness about the product or services that you're providing. I remember in the times of pharmaceutical, we used to have key opinion leaders that we would engage with about our products to be able to help create awareness, and then you would definitely grow your market share. So it's really just understanding the market that you're playing in and being able to understand the white space that you can still be able to tap into, and also understanding the strength of your services versus that of your competitors.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically in a nutshell what I can say.
Ah, fantastic. Thanks a lot, Tabo. Thanks a lot. And there's a question from Nwako Moremi. It says, as a young man or lady from the townships, I think I'll give it to Tabo as well. As a young man or lady from the township's rural area, how do I ensure that I can sell well to a level of competing with big corporate companies? I'm thinking of guys in tutoring services, for instance. Press, I don't know if you want to ask that question. Would you mind just unmuting yourself and ask it to Tabo directly?
Okay, cool. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. So I'm just asking that because I've already seen a couple of guys that are running tutoring services company. So the question is, right, so the guys, they've got the skill, but now it's a question of they need to reach the right market, right? So what sort of tools, what sort of what is it that they can do in order for them to make sure that they can compete very well? We're looking at a professionalism point of view. We're looking at the sort of platform maybe that they can also go for. And I think I'm also touching on the next question that I'm getting at. So it's a question of what is it that one can do to make sure that they are the best of the best in order to make sure that their product or service is basically reaching the right target market.
Tabo, I don't
Yeah.
know if you got it. I don't want to answer it because it's going to seem like I'm selling my business.
Yeah, I was actually, let me attempt to answer that, and I'm going to give you a share of it. I think, it's a blessing in disguise in the fact that we are in the time of the pandemic right now, that a lot of things are done virtually. Ideally, this session would have been maybe in a meeting somewhere where it's limited people that are able to attend the session. But I think in terms of expanding your business or the reach, we're living in the times of the fourth industrial revolution. So social media, it's actually one platform that you can utilize to really expand your reach in terms of, the target audience that you want to get to. And I think the business model, or rather the business proposition that you're offering, it can really help a lot with young people that are, studying online right now, that needs, help in terms of tutoring. But I think there are a lot of companies out there that can help you with strategy, because I think with any business, it's very important to fine tune the value proposition of what you're providing. Why should people go for you versus all the other tutoring companies that are out there? So you need to be able to differentiate yourself. So without, sounding like I'm selling Ezekiel's business, but maybe Ezekiel, you can talk a little bit about how you're helping small businesses be able to reach their audience. And again, before Ezekiel, you come in, it doesn't matter where you are from, Nwako. the technology or the internet has enabled us to reach. We live in a global world right now. In a way that you don't have to sell yourself short because you're from the rural area. If you have a brilliant concept, if you have a business concept that you want to sell to the world, the platform is available for you that you can be able to, sell your business. But anyway, Ezekiel, you can take it from there. I think you have a better answer than I do.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. So just to answer Ngoko's his question, it's obviously got to do with your strategy. If you're going to compete with the big boys, you're going to have to look at your resources and capabilities. If you're a one-man show, you're not going to compete with an established business. So the question is, how do I gain market share rather than saying I want to target these guys directly, or how do I want to displace these guys and take market share away from them? Because, for example, if I start a sneaker business right now and I say I want to compete against Batu, it's all going to boil down to strategy. Where am I going to position it? Where is my target market located? And what is going to differentiate me from the competitor? And that's what's really going to help me take away market share. If I'm going to start a new South African sneaker and say I want to compete with great brands like Drip and Batu, what differentiates Ezekiel from Drip and Batu? And how do I take market share away from them? So it's a function of strategy, but I'd be more than happy to chat about it. I'll drop my email here, and I'll drop my mobile number, and we can have a quick conversation around that, because strategy is not a general thing. You have to look at the business and the environment that business is operating in. I wouldn't even want to make the mistake of saying doing business in Tebiso is exactly the same way as doing business in Soweto. One has to look at the business environment very carefully as well. So it's quite a loaded question, but I'll drop my details on the chat, and please feel free to engage with me. I'll drop my mobile number as well. But just looking at time, I'm just going to quickly move on and look at the next question. So if I'm shy or not outspoken, what sort of tools or platforms can I take advantage of to improve myself? I'll take that question directly just to kind of speed things up. There are many ways in which you'd be able to improve yourself as a speaker per se, and get out of your shell. I was part of an organization and still am part of that organization called Toastmasters. Not that I'm here to sell Toastmasters, but it is value for money. What Toastmasters does is it allows you to be able to build yourself up as a leader in a safe environment where you're not going to be judged and you're not going to be criticized, and you're able to build your leadership skills as well as your communication skills. It also allows you platforms to be able to network with other people who have a similar mindset to you and are trying to get to where you are. I myself, I learned networking or aggressive networking from Toastmasters, how to get out of my shell and be able to talk to a complete stranger. Those type of things in Toastmasters, you learn them. And then again, just to speak to the networking question, there's a question that says, I hear the word networking come up in a lot, but how does one go about it, especially now in COVID times? Justin, I'd like to take it, but I'd like to give it to you to take that question, networking.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zeke. I think it's a very popular word. And I think ultimately you need to first understand why you're networking, right? What is the point of networking? Because if there's no point behind it, or no goal behind the objective of networking, then it's just meeting people, right? Just for the sake of meeting people. Networking is there with a distinct objective that you want to reach and goals that you want to reach. Now, in the 21st century, you can, even now with COVID, there are multiple ways you can do it. So, for example, I actually moved to Johannesburg about a year and a half ago. And one thing that really spoke dear to me was, the COVID pandemic, and also seeing hunger increase in South Africa, probably for the first time since 1994 or pre-1994 days. Or in my age, we talk about it as the dark ages. Now, when you look at that, right, and what I did, I identified a problem. There's hunger, right? I've got a skill in terms of sales. I've got a skill in terms of understanding markets. I understand the skill of agricultural products. I'm new to a city. What do I need to do? I really want to get involved in the project. So I went onto Facebook. I looked up for farming initiatives around Joburg, and I contacted almost every single one of them, right? So cold call them, and if I couldn't get hold of them, I popped into their store, right, or popped them a mail, or joined their Facebook group. But I was just a nation. Again, that's a piece of tenacity, and that's the tenacity behind networking. I then bumped into somebody. Somebody responded with a positive sort of response. Hey, come meet us at this garden, and I did that. When I was at the garden, I offered my services. Right, I'm not saying offer your services for free or offer it for charge. But you want to get into the network. So I spent the day talking to this individual about the garden, and I built trust with him. Once I built the trust, I was then able to sort of ask him, is there anybody else who I can contact within the network and who you could maybe contact on my behalf? And I spent the whole afternoon with him. He trusted me, and he actually forwarded me not only people's names, but he actually did email intros as well as set up meetings on Teams. Again, we're using different channels here, right? I use digital, I use face-to-face, and it'll neither be one or the other. You can look at combining them all, right? So start with something, right? I had something that I could give him because in terms of the finance, understanding markets, getting the strategy, that's what I offered him, and I built up the trust. He had something that I wanted. I wanted to get into a network, and through conversation and building trust and showing him my skill levels, he then opened up the door. And that can be done with any sort of industry that you want to go into. So understanding your skills, understanding why you're networking, understanding who you need to target for a goal that you need to sort of attain, right? Wrapping those three together will allow you to network effectively.
Thanks a lot, Justin. You really smashed that question and hit it out the ballpark. I know we are now out of time, but I'd just like to check with our organizers. Bratemba, do we have an extra 10 minutes for questions, or would we cap it here? I see some important questions. There are 3 questions in the chat. I don't know if we've got another 10 minutes just to tackle those questions. Tembo, Kaugelo, either one of you.
I'm sure that the audience would be happy if their questions got answered. So I would say just answer the questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much from head office. We appreciate the permission. So I'm going to take Hello Peter's question. How will technology change the way of selling in the current environment we find ourselves in with the global pandemic? Sorry, that's a question from you. Tepi, I don't know if you want to give that question a bash.
Hi, yeah, is it the one? Yeah. How will technology change the way of selling in the current environment we find ourselves in the global pandemic? Is it that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. First and foremost, now everything is now virtual. So we are now using your things like, example today, we're using things like Teams, your Zooms, etc. All digital platforms now to have things like your business reviews. Now we're having webinars, etc., and things like emails. So for me, I think that technology now is making selling easier, and it's making it faster and more efficient. In a sense that things can be recorded. I would just like to give one example. So I'm going to be very brief because of time. I would like to give just one example where we're in the traditional space, in the old time, we would have face-to-face engagement. This is an example that happened to me, where you go to a customer and you would ask them, how many bottles of ABC should I place for you? And the customer would say, please place me 100 bottles. And then you come 2 weeks later and the customer is like, I did not order those 100 bottles. So now that things are virtual, it can be recorded on email, or if we're having virtual meetings like this, things can be recorded so that when you have to go back to a customer that says, I did not order that 100 bottles, you can show them proof. So that is how technology is evolving in the selling space. So basically making it easier, more efficient, and faster. I hope that answers the question.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Tepi. That certainly answers our question. And then moving on to our next question. It's a question that is posed from Facebook. Thank you. Shout out to all the people, all our viewers who are joining us on Facebook Live. We've got a question from Tony Pagula. Which is the best thing to do between investing in a bank, such as African Bank, and investing in easy equities? I think I'm going to give this one to Justin. Justin, if you're still with us, I think you'd be the best person probably to take this question related to investments. Just putting it in easy equities, something like easy equities, or just putting it into an African bank.
Perfect. So I'm going to assume, firstly, I'm going to put up my grandmother's hat here, and I'm going to assume African Bank is a 32-day account, something that I believe it has its place, not for me, but could be for you as well, right? So the difference between putting money in a 32-day notice account or fixed deposit, or even in your current bank account, right, is you giving the bank money. They may pay your interest rate that varies depending on how long you want to invest that money with them for, or keep the money in the bank for. So they could keep it for 32 days. That's why they say a 32-day account. They could pay you 2%, right? Every bank pays something different. But the bank doesn't just pay you that interest. They take that money and they either loan it out, or they invest in businesses, and they try to grow that money, right? And they try to make a little bit of a margin, what we call a profit off of the money that you've given them. And then they pay you that interest. The insurance companies work in a similar way as well. When you're looking at easy equities, right, or any online investment platform, let's look at Alan Gray, for example. When you put money into easy equities, right, you're putting it with a purpose to go buy a portion of a company. So Nike, Facebook, Naspers, etc. SAB doesn't exist anymore, but those are companies that are coming to people like you and me, we call the public, and they're wanting to raise money, right? They then give the public access to buy part of the company for a certain amount of money. And then those shares then get traded on a stock exchange. Easy equities allows you to go buy and invest in those shares and become an owner in that share, right? So they don't pay you interest. You are tied into, as a shareholder, into the profitability of that company, and you benefit off of the profitability of the company in the form of dividends. That's excess cash that the company has, or in share price growth.
So in essence, in a nutshell, how would I benefit from that? Would it be on a shorter term? And
Correct.
Equally, there are risks associated with putting your money in shares.
So usually, and I'll say this, it's not financial advice, please, everybody. But ultimately, if you put money in a 32-day notice account or fixed deposit, it is usually what we call liquid cash or conservative investing. That's if you don't want to lose everything. Now, you still have a chance, but it's very, very low, right? Whereas with equities, we classify that as high risk. We saw that last year when COVID struck, in the first massive wave in March, equity markets were down 30%. If you invested in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange as a whole, you would have been down about 32% between sort of March and April, right? With the fixed deposit would have just kept growing slowly and stably over time. The only problem is usually those fixed deposits pay a lower rate than inflation. So what we try to do is we try to balance the risk in a lot of investments by having high risk as well as low risk products to reduce that fall or that probability of loss.
Thanks a lot, Justin. I believe that answers Cloney's question on Facebook. Cloney on Facebook, thank you for asking the question. And getting on to our last question, this is coming from Kamogelo Pitsi. With different custom engagement channels opening up as a part of digital transformation, what enhanced skill sets are required for traditional salespersons used to face-to-face selling to enhance their skills and ensure they remain relevant to customers and still engage them effectively? I can take that one, but Thabo, I don't know if you want to go one up on your twin brother here. Earlier on, he said he's the better twin, so maybe this is a time for you to take revenge. I don't know if you want to take that one.
I don't want to be the only one answering questions here, but it's a very interesting question, and I think it's it doesn't only goes to sales, but it's relevant to all things, jobs, or roles across business, in terms of how best can one transform your role to be relevant in these times of the digital transformation or the fourth industrial revolution. So the most important thing is, I think, we always talk about people's skills as being very important in terms of sales, to being successful in terms of as a salesperson. Someone was asking about how would I become a successful salesperson if I'm an introvert. So the things about communication and all the other soft skills that we're talking about, you can still be able to showcase those kind of soft skills even in a digital environment. I mean, the fact that we having business meetings through Zooms and Teams doesn't mean you're missing that opportunity to have a discussion around breaking the ice, having that discussion with the client and understanding, making sure that they are comfortable in the meeting. But I think for me, I think technology is more of an enabler than a challenge. So I think we also need to make sure that we understand how, as a salesperson, you can be able to utilize data analytics, to be able to effectively sell to your clients. There was a question around how to grow market share. So you can use data analytics to be able to gather the information about your target market, and be able to segment it according to the target market that would be interested in the products that you need. So technology, I think it shouldn't be something that threatens us in our role. I know people that are threatened by AI, to say it's going to take their jobs. Everyone wants to do coding, but it's all about how you transform your roles to becoming more relevant.
Ah, fantastic. Thanks a lot, Thabo. Thank you. Just to augment onto that question, I think, Justin, perhaps if I can bring you back into the conversation related to this. I mean, we work for, without sounding like we're bragging or anything, but we work for London Stock Exchange Group, and we see these digital trends where, as I would say, probably in the next 5 years or so, every sales consultant or every sales specialist has to know their products, and that requires at least some sort of coding to some extent, probably in the next 5 years, understanding very basic coding languages. Not to say one has to be an expert, but to be able to at least understand coding and data science to some extent. What do you make of that question in terms of making sure that you're not rendered as obsolete as a salesperson, or even any person in any industry? I think it cuts across all industries, and understanding data science or coding to some extent.
Exactly. So the brilliant question. I think it's very important, because we'll be silly to think that technology is not coming in, and we got sales technology. In fact, I was busy discussing this with a friend of mine who's actually stepped into that realm. But working with the London Stock Exchange Group, I think we found that with regards to digitization, and when I look at digitization, I'm focusing on the wealth space, right? Data is essentially going to be collected, right? It's going to be essentially, in intents and purposes, uncommoditized, just raw data in this form, right? It's about how we take that data, how we unpack it, how we drill down, how we segment it, how we use that data to understand our clients better, right? And we have technology right now that if you Google, let's say, a chili sauce brand or a vegetable brand or a makeup brand, there's technology out there that will inundate your social media feed with push marketing completely, right? And because it's not just focusing on you with regards to that aspect, it's focusing on you, with regards to every aspect where you're clicking what you're doing, and it's summarizing who you are as a person. Now, that is very powerful, right? And to use it effectively will actually open up doors. You'll be able to understand your clients in ways that you possibly would never have understood them before. But the conundrum here is how do you bring the personal aspect to it? Now, selling on a computer, selling in person, completely different, right? You need to bring those interpersonal skills as well. And I think that's the aspect that people are starting to forget. You need to be able to increase your voice tone, your body language, position, your facial expressions in a way that can be communicated. So you need to pair the digitization with the human aspect as well. It will never be, well, not in my lifetime, I expect where everything will be digitized. There will need to be human aspect. So don't ever forget to learn those skills like coding, because the coding will help you understand and unpack maybe a data set, be able to extrapolate data or pull data and understand your clients. In this instance, we launched desktops, and desktops that we use have the ability to code in. So if you don't like a layout or data representation, you can change it if you know how to code. But coders are not going to be the people who are going to run this world. It's going to be the visionaries, right? The visionaries who take the coders and can work with them, talk with them, and build a product that can target the clients in specific ways, and address the client's needs and sort of pain points. And I think that's where the sweet spot's going to be.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic, Justin. Thank you so much. I believe those are all the questions that we have on the chat. It's been absolutely amazing journeying with all of you today. And a very special shout out to Think Big 39 with the work that you guys are doing with the youth. And thanks to our speakers, a very massive thank you to our speakers, Tebiso Interview, Thabo Piti, and Justin van Wyk. And that rounds it up for me, as Robert Marawa would say, Sasiya Manje, and I would just like to hand over to the Think Big 39 representatives. Press over to you. Just before I go, could I please ask our speakers to just please share your social media handles on the chat for our audience to be able to follow you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Press.
Wow. What an amazing session. Thanks a lot, guys. I feel like we could just continue without ending. So really great. Thanks a lot, guys, once again. Yeah, in terms of your contact details, Ezekiel, so what we will do is we will share a package, basically the slides that you've presented on the first session, as well as some of the slides that we prepared for the guys. We'll be sending that throughout to the team. So over and above the links and details that you're providing on the chat, they will also get the details on that email that we'll send. So yeah, thanks, guys. I really hope that you guys enjoyed the session. And if you guys do have additional questions, Ezekiel and the team will also be available for you guys to contact them wherever possible. So what we will do again, you will find their details in this the package that we'll send. So you will see later today, we will send you guys a link where we would request you guys to give us your feedback as to how did you find the session, and just so that we can improve and some of the content that you guys would like us to share with you. And you will also see a link around the content development. Ezekiel and the rest of the guys, I could see like you guys have amazing content that I feel like actually we might actually make use of on the online learning platform. So it would also be great to also just have some of that content on Funa, but we will get in touch. So please, guys, if you are interested, as I said earlier, you do have content that you would like to share in a discipline that you feel you are an expert in, please get in touch with us. So what we will do is, when you've provided us with the slides, we will get you in touch with our experts who are going to help you to moderate the content in such a way that it can engage with people, and the rest is history. So basically, people can interact with the content online. They can take tests and assessment and get automatically certified. So that should be all from my side. Thank you very much to everyone. We will chat to you guys on our next session. Just one last thing before we close. So the online learning platform is not yet live. So we're planning to have it live within the next 2 months. So be on the lookout. Thank you very much, everyone, and cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.